Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. On behalf of the Friends of Steel Creek Nature Center and Park, I'd like to welcome you to the 25th anniversary of Wildlife Weekend. I'm Wes Walker. I'm the chair for the events committee, and I'm going to be your host for this evening's events. This time, I'd like to ask you to turn off any cell phones or pagers. You may have pagers. Where did that come from? Any cell phones you may have, please put them on vibrate or silent mode, please. Before we start this evening's presentations, I'd like to take a moment to recognize some individuals with us tonight whose contributions make this event and all of our events possible. First of all, community leaders have played a vital role over the years in the growth and success of Wildlife Weekend. We could not have reached that milestone with the support of our community leaders, and we're delighted to have one with us here tonight. Representing Bristol, Tennessee, the Honorable Margaret Farabin, wherever. Thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for all you do to go and make Steel Creek Park a natural gem of this community. Over the past 3 months, I've had the privilege of working with a team of multi-talented individuals to craft this year's iteration of Wildlife Weekend. I'd like to recognize some of those who have done just fantastic work in making this what it is this week. Not here tonight, but I can't overlook her in this. Ann Dunham from the city of Bristol. If you don't know Ann, you probably have seen her work. Everything that comes out of Bristol is really touched by Ann. In fact, this year's logo, a really beautiful 25th anniversary logo, Ann developed that, and we're very proud to use that. Another individual who can't be here tonight, Megan Christian. This year we're taking our traditional passport from Wildlife Weekend, and we're going digital on your app. So now that the Generation X can go and play with us this year as well, and that has been really a tremendous undertaking. And so Megan's done a great job. Sunny Shermer. Sunny is just everybody looks forward to Wildlife Weekend. I look forward to Sunny putting out this wonderful spread of food. Thank you so much. She is always, she is always so clutch in making sure that we are always well fed, and it's excellent food. Harvey Anderson is somewhere around here. Harvey there, if you come out tomorrow, he will make you sweat and show you some wonderful parts of the park. Appalachian through trail hiker. Just really great to go and have him on our team as we plot some new adventures for our participants this year. Andy Berry, don't know where Andy is. There's Andy in the back. Andy's done 2 new things this year. We have a park mascot named Chippy. Andy has made sure that Chippy's going to show up tomorrow. Found him out in the woods and got him back in here. Andy has also arranged for the first time ever we're going to have a food truck in the park tomorrow for this event, so we're going to have food available during the event for you guys. Robin, I'm going to Farabin. I'll talk about him later. And it's in a good way. Stephanie Cousins, she's been great for the group. Stephanie, where are you? There you are, right in front of me. How many years is this for you? How many years have you been doing this?
I don't know.
Yeah, about 30. So Stephanie's been here a long time with us, and she's just been an invaluable source of information as to how to move forward with it. And then Jeremy and Lance, just the point of contact for us when we're dealing with the park. We kind of relay to them what our vision is, and they tell us, yeah, I think we can do that. And so we've had a great group of people. It's been my honor to work with them. And so we hope you come out tomorrow and take a look at what we've created for you. Last person I'd like to recognize, this person is a lifelong Bristol native. Began his adult life in the service of his country while deployed to Desert Storm. From there, he continued to serve his hometown community in various capacities, working for the city of Bristol. On the occasion of our 25th anniversary of Wildlife Weekend, we asked him if he'd be willing to give us a brief history of the past 25 years of Steel Creek Park. Y'all must have clued in on the brief. And he's got free reign to go. He's currently the director of the Bristol, Tennessee Parks and Recreation, and likely the hardest working director you will ever meet anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Terry Napier.
Thanks, Wes. So I hate to let you down, but when Wes called me, he said, I need you to do a presentation on the history of the park. Well, those who know me my presentations tend to be a little long. So I have a history of the park, and it's about 3 hours long, and Wes told me I could not do that tonight. So you get the abbreviated version because I'm not who you came to listen to. So really, more than the history of this thing that we're doing this weekend, it's the importance of why this thing happens. And you know, I've had the privilege of working for this community, for the city, for 31 years. The first half of that as a police officer and as a rookie patrolman, this park is where I patrolled. So this has always been home for me when I've been with the city. And I was blessed, about 16 years ago to take over this position. And I think I was still an interim, and the city manager said, "Hey, I need you to go down to the park, whatever night, and I need you to meet with the Friends group. And they've got a project that they need you to do." And I thought, okay, who's the Friends group? Well, that's the night that I met Miss Becky Wilkerson, who was the chair of the Friends at that time, and Becky and the Friends, they were going to build a walking trail in the park. And I said, okay, that sounds like fun. And I figured out right then and there that night, when the Friends group says they're going to do something, they do it, okay? And you follow along and you make things happen. And that's kind of how I came to work with the Friends. So, make no doubt these things happen because of dedicated volunteers like the Friends of Steel Creek Park and Nature Center. There wouldn't be a wildlife weekend. You would not be in this building if it wasn't for the Friends, okay? From the city, I can only do so much, but what the Friends have done and do every day is phenomenal. Probably for me, the saddest thing about Wildlife Weekend is we don't have enough people here. So for this 25th anniversary, what I challenge each and every one of you to do, for the 26th, you have to bring somebody with you. Next year, we double it, okay? So for the 25th anniversary, your gift back to the Friends is next year you bring somebody.
Or for tomorrow, bring somebody.
Or bring somebody tomorrow. You can always bring somebody, but next year we want to double this crowd. We want to double this crowd because Steel Creek Park is phenomenal, and you know that. That's why you're here. The things that Jeremy and his staff do is phenomenal. What we have here is phenomenal. Bristol we love Bristol. Bristol is home. Bristol's a small town, and that's why we love it. And look what we have right in the middle. Other cities don't have this. Big cities don't have this, and so many people they just take it for granted. So, my speech about the longevity of this event is our friends. Our friends are what make this event, and they've made it stronger every year, and it keeps getting stronger. And Sonny keeps cooking more food, so next year she's going to have to cook twice as much because we're going to have twice as many people. But it is a great event. It has stood the test of time. COVID, we're back. It didn't take us out. So I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you supporting the Friends and the staff of Steel Creek Park Nature Center and what they do. 25 is always special. But let's start working on the next 25, and let's make the next 25 even better, because the park's just going to keep getting better, because it's really about the history, and history's made every day. So again, you didn't come to listen to me. Thank you, Friends. Thank you for all you do, have done, and will do. I'm supposed to introduce Jeremy Stout as if Jeremy Stout needs any introduction. As the director and all my employees, I have some that are really hard to supervise. He's not one of them, okay? I just stay out of his way and let him do his thing. And when I need somebody to go talk to somebody and be really, really smart, I call Jeremy. And so he's really the perfect employee. He runs his shop and he takes care of it. When I need him to make me look good, he does. So come on up, Jeremy, and you do your thing, and I will stand down. So thank you, everyone.
I was really hoping to get some of Terry's slides. He undersold himself. His history of the park presentation is really a special thing. There's probably nobody in the city that has done more to accumulate the history of this park than Terry Napier. So maybe that'll be a future topic for this event. So yeah, again, I'll echo what the previous folks have said already. This is our 25th annual Wildlife Weekend. When I actually missed my first ever Wildlife Weekend, I think it was the 8th because my oldest child was being born. And that child is driving himself to school now. So I've been here for a few of these now. But this is such a special event, and this is such a special group of people. I also just want to hammer home this idea of how fortunate we are to have the Friends group that we have, the Friends of Steel Creek Nature Center and Park. Because like Terry said, we wouldn't have this facility if it weren't for them. We would not be having this event if it weren't for them. They really just help us in so many ways. So thank you so much to the Friends of Steel Creek Nature Center and Park. A couple of procedural things before I introduce our special guest speaker tonight. So we will have our photography contest awards in just a few moments, so continue to be patient there if you're waiting for those. Continue to eat the food while we have it back there, especially the perishable items. If you are interested in activities and events tomorrow, well, first I hope you are, because tomorrow will be incredibly fun. All day tomorrow, 9 a.m. we start off with a bird walk. We have our bird banding operation, which will be up in the field above the Nature Center. It'll be happening till almost lunchtime. We have local celebrity Cade Campbell giving a critters and creepy crawlies walk. We have a reptile walk, a honeybee hike, and a fungus walk, all with some of our in-house naturalists here at the Nature Center. We also have a number of activities, exhibits happening both here at the Nature Center and at the lodge next door. There will be fossil casting, insect displays, rocks and minerals. Steph will let you meet and pet a real-life snake if you would like to. There is just so much to do for all ages. That's happening from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. tomorrow. So please come out for that. There's lots of prizes and giveaways that you can earn. All of this, of course, is completely free. So we hope to see you tomorrow. And one other procedural thing. So there are a couple of ways you can earn prizes at the events tomorrow. One is you can go to the App Store, the Play Store, and you can download the Goose Chase app. And so you can collect your Wildlife Weekend points in the app if you want to be one of those folks. Or if you're a Luddite like I am, you can show up and you can just register in person. We don't share your information with anybody. And you will get a physical card that you can redeem for points that will be good for patches and swag and goodies and t-shirts. Where can you go earn a t-shirt just by attending amazing programs for free? Nowhere. Right here is where you can do that, though. So come out tomorrow. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful day. It's going to be chilly, but it's going to be sunny. So just bundle up and come on out early. It'll be great. So without any further ado, I am so thankful to introduce our guest that we have at this year's event. And just to give you a quick little backstory and to also send the friends on one more victory lap tonight. So we decided, our events committee, which Wes Walker has headed up, we decided early on that our apiary program is hot right now at Steel Creek Park. We now have an active apiary with 3 live hives outside near the Nature Center. And of course we have our one observation hive that's inside the Nature Center. Our friends have coordinated several grants that have allowed those exhibits and pollination service opportunities to be made available, and we're seeking more grants in the very near future. We've also opened our new temporary exhibit in the Lakeview Gallery. That's an exhibit on pollinators and pollination. That's happening right now. So we knew that when we were setting out to have Wildlife Weekend, which is always the second Saturday in October, we knew that we wanted a speaker that was going to talk to us about plants, pollinators, and pollination. And so a quick Google search revealed that, and also by popular demand from some former students, we found out that one of the world experts on plant-pollinator relationships was hiding in our own backyard at East Tennessee State University. He's been there since 2016, associate professor in the Department of Biological Sciences, got his PhD from the University of Pittsburgh, is that correct? And especially has authored and co-authored more than 50 scientific publications, and many of his work is monumentally important. A lot of his work focuses on the conservation aspects of plant-pollinator relationships into the present and forecasted into the future. So without overselling this or overhyping this, quite literally, this man's research is helping shape all of our food security and global biodiversity for generations to come. So some pretty huge shoes there, and I'm happy to introduce Dr. Gerardo Arceo Gomez.
Okay, no pressure. World expert. Let me get the technology going. I am also not from the app generations. Just paper and pen is fine. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very, very excited and happy to be here. Thank you to Jeremy, of course, and the board, and all of you that make this possible. And it's been amazing to just in these 10, 15 minutes to learn all the amazing work that you guys do and what you have here, which I don't know why I did not know, but now I'll be back. I'll make sure I'll be back every year and every weekend if possible. It's an amazing place and you guys are doing some amazing work. So yeah, congratulations and thank you for inviting me. And I'll do my best to fulfill the expectations that have been created. So yeah, a little bit about me. So yeah, my name is Dr. Gomez. I've been at ETSU for about 7 years now as a professor. And my research is about my passion, which is pollination. I've been doing it for over about 15 years now through my master's, PhD, even so my undergrad, and now 7 years as a professor. So I learned a little bit along the way, and hopefully I can share a little bit about that with you and get you a little bit more excited about pollination and why I think it's such an amazing interaction. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk a little bit about first some of the basics, what pollination is, how it works. I'm also going to try to talk briefly about the different types of pollination that are out there. I'm going to talk a little bit about who are the different pollinators. And then I'm going to try to talk a little bit about how plants make this work. So how does plants make all this pollination work and so efficiently? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm getting to the conservation aspect, a little bit of the problems that some of the pollinators are facing right now, what are the issues, and what can we do about it. And then after that, if you have any questions in time, I'll be happy to take any questions. And I just remember I heard the name Kate Campbell, and he's in my conservation biology class right now, so it's great that he's here contributing to this event. So let's see if this works. Of course, technology always lets me down. There you go. So I can also do it from here, I guess. So what is pollination? So pollination is the transport of pollen, which is, male gametes, the flowers, male gametes, and they go from one flower to the next. So I'm just going to use my finger, I guess. So pollen, male gametes, they travel from flower to flower. Pollen is the male gametes, and they go to this little section over here, which is the female structure of the flower, and that's called the style. The style and the stigma receives the pollen. So pollen has to move in most cases, but not necessarily from one flower to another flower. So the male gametes make contact with the female structure, and then a seed is formed. So it's basically, in a nutshell, how pollination works, movement of pollen from one flower to the next, for the purpose of seed production. So it's pollen transfer between flowers. I think I'm just gonna use this over here. Sorry about the technical issues. So the main question is, how does pollen travel? So how does pollen makes it from one flower to the next? One of the most common ways that pollen can do that is through wind. Of course, so wind comes, especially when you have strong winds, there's a lot of pollen that gets taken from one plant and then just travels through the air and until it finds another flower and lands on the stigma, which is the female structure, and then it fertilizes the ovule that's going to form a seed. And you can see that all these pollen that's being moved by just by air, just by lots of air moving to the plants and just taking this pollen from one flower to the next. So that's the kind of most basic form of pollen movement. So some examples of wind pollinated species, which I'm sure you all know, I don't have to tell you about oaks, pines, grasses, and willows. All those plants are mainly pollinated by wind. So wind is the main contributor to pollen movement in all these species. And when all these species starts to flower and producing all that pollen, is when you get your allergies, right? So that's exactly when you start sneezing a lot and your car turns yellow because it's all these wind pollinated species are now flowering and producing so much pollen. Wind pollinated species can produce up to 10 more times pollen than any other plant species. 10 to 100 times more pollen than any other species. They produce a ton of pollen, like millions and millions and millions of pollen grains. So the question would be why? Why do wind pollinated species need to produce that much pollen? Does anyone want to make a guess as to why wind pollinated species need to make so much pollen?
So hard to reach the other flowers.
Of course, yeah. So the wind is unreliable. You never know where the wind's gonna blow. It can blow one direction, the other direction. There's no way you can control that. So it's a very unreliable process. One way to try to get around that is to produce a ton of pollen. So by increasing the amount of pollen, you're increasing the chances that one of those is gonna land in the right place. So they produce thousands, if not millions of pollen grains. So they increase the chance that one of those, like I just said, is going to land in a flower, fertilize the ovule, and produce a seed. So that's why you get your allergies, because all these species are trying to produce as much pollen as they can in order to increase their chances for reproduction. But on the other hand, you have animal pollination. And animal pollination is a little bit more reliable than wind. Insects and animals have more predictable movements. They travel in certain patterns, so there's not as unreliable as the wind, and it's the most important form of pollinations, I would say, because 80% of all flowering plants are pollinated by animals. So wind pollinated species are about 20%. Animal pollination is about 80%, and it's because it's much more efficient than the wind in order to transporting these pollen grains from one flower to the next. So I'm going to focus a little bit on animal pollination for the rest of the talk. So there's a lot of pollinator diversity. You probably are familiar with your invertebrate species, mostly bees, for example. Bees are the most famous common pollinators that everyone knows. But there are also other invertebrate species that are good pollinators that we usually don't talk about a lot. But beetles, they can be good pollinators for some species. Of course, different types of butterflies can be good pollinators for some species. Moths are also very good pollinators. And I don't have a picture over here, but flies, we usually don't like flies, even house flies. They can be good pollinators for some species as well. So it's not only bees that do most of the pollination. It's one of the messages that I try to always bring when I'm invited to give talks like this, to try to broaden the scope that there's more pollinators out there than just bees. And even if you go beyond the invertebrate world, you have also vertebrates that are very important pollinators. So you have your bats. Bats are very important pollinators, especially in desert systems. A lot of cacti and agaves are pollinated by bats. A lot of different types of birds, particularly hummingbirds, can also be very good, efficient pollinators, and even reptiles. we don't think of lizards as being pollinators, but lizards can also be pollinators, particularly in tropical systems. Reptiles can have a huge importance as pollinators. Just as a side note, plants that are pollinated by bats, they flower at night. They flower at night because that's when the bats are active. Bats are mostly active at night, so the plants have learned that it would be better for them to only flower at night. So you have all these cacti and agaves, when they produce flowers, they produce them at night. They smell a lot, and they're usually white. And this attracts the bats to those flowers, and they're usually big flowers. So it's very impressive to see, if you ever see a video of a bat pollinating a flower, they have this huge tongue that they use to get the nectar of those flowers, and it's very amazing to see how they perform this particular function. So again, a lot of different types of pollinators, not only bees, but we're gonna talk about bees a little bit. So again, just how does pollination work, at least animal pollination. So here you have your pollinator, your little bee, and it has to move from flower to flower, ideally from the same species. So it picks up pollen from one flower, and then deposits in the next flower, picks up some pollen from here, and deposits in the next flower. So it needs to travel to different flowers. It needs to travel from flower to flower, and transporting pollen from one to the next. So what encourages, well, when this happens, the bee starts collecting pollen in its body. Usually it could be in the back, it could be here in the front, it could be in the legs. It could collect pollen in different parts of the body, and it deposits the pollen in the female structure of the flower, which I talked about, the stigma. And then this pollen is going to germinate, fertilize the ovule, and produce a seed. And just to give you a real picture of how this looks like, this is how it looks like. So here you have a stigma. This is like the female reproductive structure of a plant. And all these little things over here, they're pollen grains. And you can see many different types of pollen grains in this picture. So you have this big one over here. You have the spiky one. You have the one that looks like a football. You have this one that looks like a soccer ball. So you got different types of pollen. Sometimes pollination can get messy, and you'll not only get pollen from one species, but you can get pollen from multiple species. So it's also not a perfect world, but nonetheless, it's very efficient. So now the question is, why are pollinators traveling between flowers? So like I said, they have to move from one flower to the next, transporting out this pollen. So why are the pollinators moving from flower to flower? Why it entices them to perform this function? So pollinators have some benefits from this type of interaction. They're actually seeking something from the plant and inadvertently performing this pollination function. And one of the things that they're most interested in is nectar. Nectar is the main energy source for these pollinators. Name it bees or butterflies or bats, or especially hummingbirds, they're all after the nectar. The nectar is a very sugary solution, has a lot of carbohydrates, which means has a lot of energy. It provides a lot of energy for these animals to live and to perform all the functions that they need to perform. So they're really, really after the nectar. Imagine for this is what the flower might look like, a nice, cold little drink in the middle of the day when the sun is hot. They go and they have the little drink of nectar, and that makes them very, very happy. And like I said, all the pollinators, the nectar is the main energy source. Like hummingbirds burn tons of calories. Some of the more active organisms out there, they need a lot of nectar in order to perform their activities. And the hummingbirds are just, moving their wings very fast all the time, and that burns a lot of calories. So they need to drink a lot of nectar in order to survive. But plants can offer something else instead of nectar. They can just squeeze something else just to make it more attractive to the bees. And sunflowers, for example, can produce caffeine in their nectar. So, the morning bee goes and gets a sip of the nectar, it gets, this little buzz, and now it's all focused and ready to go. Well, it's pretty much the same way that, we like our coffee in the morning. Some of the bees like their coffee in the morning. And why is this important for the flowers as well? What happens when you go to Starbucks, for example? Every time I drive by Starbucks, there's a line. There's always a line. There's always people coming back for their little dose of caffeine in the morning. But this is good for the flower as well because it's the same for insects. The insect every morning comes back and makes the line for its little dose of caffeine in the morning. It helps it to focus more, be more alert, and get started in the morning. So it makes it a little bit addictive, it makes the bees a little bit addicted to the caffeine as well. And this is good for the plant because again, the pollinators keep coming back, and it makes it easy for the pollinators to remember where those flowers are. So again, plants can offer a little something with the nectar, not just sugar, in order to entice the pollinators. Another main reward that people normally know about is pollen. Pollen has a lot of protein, so a lot of insects use this as a food source. A lot of beetles, for example, eat pollen. It's the main source of protein for the beetles. However, bees do not directly consume the pollen. That's not the main resource for the bees. Even though you always see these pictures with bees covering pollen, which makes you think that bees are after the pollen to consume themselves. But in reality, what they do, they collect it because that's what they use to feed their offspring. So the pollen, a lot of bees have pollen baskets. So they have little containers that they go, like if you go to the supermarket or you go to the farmer's market, they carry their baskets and they collect the pollen. When they get to the hive or to their nest, they mix that pollen with nectar and they make a solution to feed the young. And that's the main purpose of the pollen for the bees, is to feed their offspring. They rarely consume the pollen themselves. Their main source of energy for them is the nectar. So they collect the pollen because it's, again, attached with good development of their offspring. And feel free to ask questions if I say something and you want to ask a question while talking.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does the plant that gets the various different types of pollen, does it have any effect on that plant? Does it wait for just the pollen it's looking for, or do you get variations from that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's not good for the plant to get other types of pollen grains that is not its own. So that's one of the main things that I have studied in my research, and plants usually develop strategies to avoid that. They only want to get their own pollen. So they're always trying to evolve different strategies to avoid getting pollen from other plants because it doesn't produce a seed and it's not good for them. And they can do that in several ways. They can flower at different times. They evolve specialized insects so they don't share the same pollinator. And there's other mechanisms they can use to avoid getting pollen from other plants. But it usually happens even just a little bit because pollination, again, it's kind of still a messy affair, a messy interaction. But they're always trying to avoid it.
So there's no mutations because of that. They just discount it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, the queen eats what, royal jelly?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it's called? How is that different from nectar and pollen mixture? Is that special? In which way?
I think it's very similar. It's pretty much the same thing. I don't know really the specifics of the difference between what the queen eats and the offerings it's eating. I can't think of any difference, but it's pretty much the same mixture of pollen and nectar.
But they call it royal jelly, I think.
I think they do. To be honest, I never really heard about that term, but it makes sense that it's the queen, so it must be royal, and it's sort of a jelly, so it makes sense that people call it that way. But yeah, I never really personally heard about that term. But the queen needs to, it's a little bit different. And I'll get to that. No, all bees have a queen. So a lot of the bees are actually solitary. So they travel alone. The social bees that have a queen, they're rare. They're not the norm. Like honeybees and bumblebees, they're the exception to the world of the bees. So a lot of the bees are solitary. They just like to be alone. And in case of bumblebees, for example, they have to eat a lot of food because they have to lay a lot of eggs. And they have a more complicated life cycle that we can talk about. So first it's females, and then it's males, and they have a little structure going on. But we can talk about that later if you're interested in more about that. Another type of reward that flowers produce that is not widely talked about is scents and oils. So flowers produce all these very aromatic compounds in the form of scents and oils. So why do you guys think that they use these particular rewards? Why would they use the scent and the oil? Why would they use the smells? What did
Pollinators. Attract pollinators.
attract mates? So pretty much the same as we do. They use perfume. So they go and they visit the flowers, and the flowers smell and offer this smell as a reward, and they go and they collect it and they put it on, and now they smell good, and they go and find the mate. So if you think that Chanel or Calvin Klein or the Kardashians invented the perfume, well, bees have been doing it for hundreds of thousands of years before them. So they really invented the notion of, let's dress up, let's put some perfume, and let's find a mate. So there's a lot of flowers that actually that's what they offer as a reward. Scents and oils that they mainly use as a way to attract mates. So there's other types of, a lot of orchids, for example, offer this type of rewards, oils and scents that the pollinators like to collect, a special type of pollinators in order to help them find a suitable mate. Other flowers can get very sneaky and are very deceiving. And they can look something like this. I gave it away, but I was going to ask a question. So this is a very sort of complex floral shape. It has a lot of different parts. It has this, kind of sac over here, and these things hanging, and it has these petals in the back, and it has a very complex color pattern. It has hairs over here. So it would take really, really a lot of different steps and a lot of time to really come up with a flower that actually looks like this. So what would be, the purpose of having a flower that's so complex like this one over here? So really, the purpose of these flowers is deception. This flower doesn't offer any reward. It doesn't offer nectar. It doesn't offer pollen. It doesn't offer scents. It doesn't offer oils. But it's trying to look like a female bee. It's trying to make the bee think that it's a female, and you can see the male bee sees this looks like a female bee. It tries to go and mate with the bee, and in the process pollinates the flower. And in about 5 seconds or so, it realizes it's not actually a bee, but at that point, it's too late. It's done its job, it's pollinated the flower, and it can move on. So a lot of flowers also use deception and try to look like other things that attract the bees in order to make the bees visit those flowers. So this is a very, very specialized form of pollination because this particular flower looks very, very closely to the female version of this particular bee species. So again, many different types of rewards, many different types of pollination, not only nectar, but pollen, caffeine, oil, scents, you also deception. So the pollination world, it's much more complex than we usually think of. There's a lot of complexity and really amazing things happening in pollination. So the way that I usually think about it is like, when you go to a meadow or you go to a grasslands, it's like us going to Las Vegas and walking to the main strip in Las Vegas or going to Times Square. And what do you see? Lots of lights. Lots of different lights, lots of different shapes, all these advertising coming at you. And then if you walk through Chinatown, there's all these smells, and you start smelling all this, and all this is calling you, the signs, the lights, the different size and intensity and the smells, and they're trying to exploit your senses in order to attract you to a place. That's what advertising is doing. But that's really what the flowers is doing. When the bees are going through a meadow and they're going to a grassland or a forest, it's like they're going to Las Vegas or Times Square, and they have all these colors and shapes and sizes and smells, everything trying to get your attention. You know, the flowers are trying to exploit their senses and attract them in order to visit the flowers. And that's why we have this amazing diversity of flowers, many different colors, many different shapes, you know, sizes, like I said, many different types of floral rewards, because all of these flowers are trying to exploit the sensory systems of different types of insects, and that's what has led to this great diversity of many different types of flowers. So flowers, the way that I see, are these like communication device. They're designed to manipulate animal behavior. They're not white or red or pink because of, you know, just by chance. That particular color, that particular shape, that particular scent has a purpose. You know, everything has come together for a very specific reason, because it's very efficient at attracting a particular type of pollinator. So they're very good communication devices. And remember, the pollinator needs to travel from one flower to the other of the next species. So if you think about it, what the flower is doing is manipulating the animal behavior. It's tricking the insect into doing what the plant wants the insect to do. I want you to come to me and then go to the flower and then to go to the next. And the insect is exactly what it's doing. So the flower is manipulating and exploiting the sensory system of the insect so the plant can get pollinated. So that's what I fall in love with pollination. Once I saw it this way, that really the plant, in a way, manipulating animal behavior for its own purpose via this diversity of shapes, flowers, colors, and scents. And once I thought about it, it became an amazing world to me to try to study. One thing that I like to point out, because also it's not very widely known, is that insects and animals don't sense, don't see, don't smell the same way we do. They have very different sensory systems. So they don't see the same colors, they don't smell the same things. Their sensory systems are different than ours. So this is what we would see, a flower, and this is what a bee would see. Actually, a purple flower to a pollinator would be actually green. This yellow flower will look more like pink. So they have different sensory systems. Here you have, again, different flowers, how they will be seen by us, by humans, and then how we see by different insects, different types of bees, different types of butterflies, beetles. They all have different sensory systems. So, and I like to mention this because we like to see things always with a human point of view. And it's hard to really take a step back and think about that it's not everything about humans, and not everyone sees the ways we see or communicates the way we communicate, or smells things the way we do. And it's good to try and sometimes see it from the perspective of other organisms, in this case bees and beetles and butterflies and other animals. Just an example, hummingbirds see the red very well. That's why a lot of hummingbird pollinated plants are red. It's exploiting the sensory system of hummingbirds because they can perceive this color very well. Many bees cannot see red. You will not see a lot of bee pollinated plants that are red because bees cannot see red. So usually bee pollinated flowers will be yellow, green, blue. That's what the pollinators really can see. So it's important to see that through the lens of the insects as well. And again, a reason why I fall in love with this is because this particular interaction had led to this great diversity that we enjoy as we walk, as we hike, as you walk through the park and you see all these and many different types of flowers, colors and shapes and sizes and amazing forms. All these forms and shapes have evolved because of this interaction. Pollination has really led to the diversity of flowers that we see today. It's the main interaction responsible for everything, all these that we enjoy. And that's one main reason why I really also like to study this particular interaction. Everything that you see here, all these different weird shapes that you see, all those have a purpose. So all those, they're exploiting something about the insects to make them very attractive to them. And we have enormous diversity of flowers. plants with flower. So we talked a little about honeybees, so let me expand a little bit on honeybees, because usually when we think about pollination, we think about honeybees. It's as the main pollinator. First of all, it's not native. It comes from Europe. It's the European honeybee. So it has not evolved with the flowers that we have here. It's an introduced species. Like I said, it's the exception. It's social. Most bees are solitary. Their colonies can live many, many years. Usually most bees only live 1 year, 1 season. They emerge, they reproduce, they pollinate, they die, and then the next generation comes the following season. The colonies of honeybees, they're different. They can live many years. They make honey to survive the winter, so that's the main reason why they produce honey, and we use them for this particular purpose. Not all bees make honey because they don't need to survive the winter. Like I said, a lot of bees only have a yearly cycle. They die in the winter and they emerge in the spring.
Would you say we've domesticated the honeybee?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the honeybee is a domesticated species. So we have definitely domesticated it. Honeybees and bumblebees in the U.S. are the only social bees. All the other bees in the U.S. are solitary, so it's like it's their deception. They're rare in terms of their life histories. And honeybees have the largest colonies, even compared to bumblebees. They're usually generalist species, they will go to almost any single flower that you have. You will see honeybees everywhere. They don't have particular preferences. They just exploit every single flower they can see. Unfortunately, and some people get mad at me when I say this, they're not the most efficient pollinators. They're introduced from Europe, so they're really doing their best with the flowers that they have here, but they did not grow up with the flowers that we have. They grew up with the flowers in Europe, that they used them pollinating. So they're not very efficient at pollinating the flowers that we have. They're very messy, inefficient pollinators. In contrast, we have 20,000 species of bees around the world. 4,000 are native to the U.S. So we have 399 bees that we have chosen to ignore that are native to the U.S. They have been here this whole time, and around the world we have 20,000 species. These are some examples of bees that are native to the U.S. And you can see just that amazing, amazing diversity of, again, sizes and shapes and forms and different colors. We have an amazing diversity of native bees. Also, another of the messages that I like to give is that we need to start caring more about the native bees that we have. 4,000 bees that are native to U.S. that are beautiful, very beautiful, and we should care about those as well. Here you have another few examples of native bees to the U.S. And you can see they're all different sizes. You have carpenter bees, osmias, you have bumblebees. A lot of them have furry, they have hair, some of them look metallic, different sizes. So it's really amazing to see the diversity of bees that we have. And like I said, a lot of these are solitary and only live 1 year. And then I also like to bring attention to other things that are good, efficient pollinators, but they're not bees, like butterflies. Butterflies can be very, very good pollinators. We have a great diversity of butterflies in the U.S. as well. You probably know the monarch butterfly that migrates through here, so you use it at a part of the year, usually pollinating milkweeds or feeding on milkweeds. They can be very efficient pollinators of some species. Other not so good looking lepidopterans, like this skipper over here, usually not very attractive, doesn't look as nice as the monarch, but it also could be a very good efficient pollinator. And like I said, moths. Moths are also can be very beautiful and very efficient pollinators of some plant species, especially our native species. We also have beetles. Like I said, beetles, sometimes we don't think of them as pollinators, but they can also be very efficient pollinators. They move around flowers a lot. So they're usually the main pollinators of some species as well. Wasps, we usually don't like wasps because they're kind of scary sometimes and they can bite you and can be a little aggressive, but they can be very good pollinators of some plant species. They also rely on nectar in order to obtain their energy and the sugars that they need. So it's good to start appreciating some of these insects as well. And like I said, flies, we usually don't think as flies as being very useful or doing anything good, and we usually want them away from our food. But even houseflies can be very good pollinators. And some species are particularly adapted to be pollinated by flies. The flies are the main pollinators of those species. And interesting enough, what do you guys think if a flower needs to do in order to attract flies? Stink. They need to stink, and they need to look like something that is going bad, like you have left a pork chop in your counter for a week, and it's not looking good and it's not smelling good. Well, flowers want to replicate that, so they have this reddish coloration. They look like something is going bad, and they usually stink. They have this very foul smell, and they're trying to exploit the sensory systems of the flies because they're attracted to these particular characteristics. One plant that I learned that is pollinated by flies, and I think it looks like this, is the pawpaw that we have around here. I think it's a native fruit here. People have been using it around here for a long time, and it's pollinated by flies, and it has this type of pollination. Jock in the pulpit also, I think it grows around here, also pollinated by flies. Doesn't smell very good. But again, this is amazes me how plants are manipulating the sensory system of these organisms and just giving them what they want in order for them to perform this pollination process. And like I said, birds can also be very good pollinators. Many different types of birds here in the U.S., mainly hummingbirds, but they can also have many different types of birds that like to feed on nectar. They can be very good pollinators. Some plants can also go on the next step, and they also have evolved this little perch for the birds to do their job without getting too tired. So they have this little perch where the bee goes and grabs into it, and they can just reach into the flower and then feed on the nectar, and then the pollination is very efficient. There was a study when they said, well, what happens if we remove this little perch and then the bird doesn't have anywhere to go from the top? So the bird tries to do this, and it turns out it doesn't pollinate the flower. It can't. It needs the little perch. So the plant has made it very easily for the bird to pollinate the flower, to the point that if you remove this, then the bird cannot perform its function very well. Now here it has a very nice view into the flower, very nice angle. It can reach the nectar, no problem. Here it has to struggle. Can't really find the nectar very well. So you can see how specialized these pollination systems can be, that even have these little chairs for the birds to sit and sip their nectar. And like I said, mammals can also be good pollinators. We talked about bats. Also some rodents can be good pollinators. They like to go and feed on the nectar. And finally, like I said, some reptiles, lizards. This is particularly in tropical systems. You got a few lizards that are very good at pollinating flowers. So again, I would like to just expand a little bit the view of what a pollinator is, what flowers can do, the type of animals they can attract, and how complex these systems can be in order to attract all these different animals. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about why it's important. So I come here and tell you a little bit about this type of interaction, and it's very beautiful, but should we care about it? Should we actually care about it, or is just something out to appreciate from the distance, something that is nice and pretty? But it turns out that it has a lot more important to us than just the aesthetic value. I'm assuming a lot of you go to the supermarket and see something like this. So you go to the produce aisle and you get all your fruits and your veggies, and you can make your nice salad and your fruit salad, and we all enjoy going here and purchase a lot of these nice produce that we eat almost every day, if not at the grocery store, maybe at the farmer's market. But if pollinators were to go extinct, if they would disappear, it would look like this. All that would be gone. A lot of your favorite fruits and vegetables would disappear. It would not be possible to produce them without the help of pollinators. So they provide what we call an ecosystem service or a pollination service. None of us pays $1. I mean, have you ever seen a bumblebee and give it $1? Here you go. Or a honeybee and throw them 50 cents for your services, sir. We don't do that. No, we just enjoy it because it exists. It's a natural process. It's out there. None of us own it, but we all benefit from it. A lot of our crop plants rely on this natural pollination in order to occur. And it turns out some people have estimated that around 75% of what we consume, of the major world fruit crops, rely on pollination. So without this particular interaction, almost 80% of what we eat would disappear. We will be eating grass or rocks, or I don't know what you're going to be eating, or a lot of meat perhaps, which is also not good. But all of this yummy stuff would disappear and would not be able to enjoy it if pollinators were to disappear. So that's how important this interaction is for us humans. Just some examples of the types of fruits that would disappear or would stop enjoying if bees were to disappear or these insects were to disappear. No more coffee. I'll be very sad if we don't have coffee in the morning. Starbucks will go, bankrupt. No more strawberries, no more tomatoes, eggplants, squash, blueberries, avocados, peach, almonds, cashews, apples, cucumbers, and the list goes on and on and on and on. All those stuff we will stop enjoying if this particular ecosystem service were to disappear. So again, a huge importance for us. And even plants that we don't typically think of as requiring pollinators in order to reproduce, like alfalfa or corn, they're usually known to be wind-pollinated species, alfalfa or corn. But there's some studies that have shown that when you have pollinators around, yields of alfalfa and corn go up. So even it can help these other species that we don't usually think of them as needing insects, but when insects are around, they do better. So they can be very important for those as well. So yeah, finally, what is the problem? I don't know if you guys have heard in the news or somewhere that there's some of the insects, especially pollinators, are in decline. A lot of their populations are going down. Their numbers are being reduced, and there's several problems associated with that. And I'm just going to talk about a few of them. The first note I want to make here is that, and again, some people don't like me to say this, but honeybees are not in decline. Like you well said, they're a domesticated species. So we breed them, we farm them. So even though we use them as a poster child for the problem that bees have, honeybees are not suffering. Honeybees are doing well and good because we manage them. We domesticated them. We breed them. So a lot of my colleagues like to tell me that it's like chickens. The chickens are not going to go extinct because we farm the chickens and we raise the chickens, and they'll be there for years to come. So far, a lot of bees have a problem. The honeybees seem to be doing well because we manage them. But like I said, there's 399 bees, 3,999 bees that we do not manage, and they are in decline, and their populations are suffering. And a lot of this has to do with pesticides, particularly one pesticide that we use, that its technical name is the neonicotinoid. The problem with this particular pesticide is that it's systemic. What systemic means is that once the plants absorb it, it's there. It doesn't go anywhere. The plants absorb it in its tissues, and then it's in the leaves, it's in the stems, it's everywhere. And this has a lot of advantages in the farming industry because you don't have to be reapplying the pesticide all the time. Once you apply it once, usually the pesticide is there and stays there for a long time. So it makes sense. There's a lot of advantages from that point of view. What we didn't really think about that if it gets in the leaves and if it gets in the stems and all these parts that we care about and we want to protect for the plant to do well, it also gets in the pollen and gets in the nectar. So a lot of this chemical stays here in what we call the vegetative parts, but it also gets into the floral rewards. So the pollen and the nectar now is contaminated with this chemical, with this pesticide. And guess who goes and feeds on these particular rewards? Bees. So bees consume pollen and nectar that has this chemical in it, and there's been a lot of studies that have shown that it causes cognitive impairment, so they get lost, they can't come back to their nest. If the dose is high enough, it can kill them outright, so it can be a lethal dose, and they can die. It makes them more susceptible to disease, so they get a lot of disease. So this pesticide really impairs their immune system, their cognitive system, and it can just kill them outright. So that's been a main contributor to the decline of many bee populations. The other important factor, so the pesticides contaminated, they eat it, and unfortunately they passed away. But the other important factor is habitat loss, because bees not only need something to eat, they also need a place to live. See, if they don't have a place to make their nest, and a healthy nest, or a hive with their social bees, they're not going to be able to survive. So if we turn all this beautiful land that we have around us and we turn that into concrete, into sidewalks, or into roads, or buildings, then there's not going to be any place for bees to live, to make their habitat, to make their nests, to make their hives. So destroying the habitat plus contaminating with pesticides have been the two main contributors to the decline of many bee populations. So we need to think about this moving forward.
Are there studies of what it does to their young if they're feeding them the little pollen?
So to the young, they're more susceptible because even a small dose of the pesticide would affect them more than a larger bee. So a lot of those would not finish developing or would die. When the queen consumes that large dose of pesticide, they also lay less eggs. They don't produce as many eggs. So there's unfortunately a lot of different types of effects that can be direct or indirect that affect the bees, and that's why it has been so problematic with them. So yeah, like I said, honeybees, all of them are important. Honeybees are important, but they're not the most important. They usually not the most efficient around here. Like I said, there's many different types of pollinators, insects, bees, like I said, butterflies, wasps, and we should probably take a more holistic approach or view of the pollination world and its importance for many, many different plants. A lot of native plants are adapted and specialized in these guys over here, so they need them around in order to for them to reproduce. So these ones have a huge importance as well. Honeybees, the good thing about honeybees is their numbers. So the colonies can get very large. So even though they're not the most efficient, there are a ton of them. So that's what it's beneficial for some plants to have honeybees around, is that they usually are around in large numbers. And another kind of interesting good thing about honeybees is that they can talk to each other. They can communicate. I'm sure you guys have heard about this. You guys know how honeybees communicate with each other?
They dance.
They dance. So they dance. It's like they go to the disco, to the bar, or to the club, and they start dancing, and they understand each other. So we don't all communicate the same way. No, we talk. Bees dance, and they understand each other. They usually send a couple foragers to search for where the food is, and the foragers find the food, come back to the hive, and line up all their friends like you guys are here, and they just go to the right and to the left, and you find that flower. And it's very, very efficient, and it's amazing how they do it. So again, we need to learn that we not all communicate in the same ways, and honeybees have learned how to communicate via dances. And And that also makes them somewhat good as pollinators, because once the foragers have found the food source, then you have all the hundreds of other bees nowhere to go, and this, they can take over an entire field or entire grassland, visiting all those flowers. So I ran out of fun facts to say about pollination, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. I have to say that I have an amazing group of students here at ETSU. A lot of what I do would not be possible without them. They're really the drivers of the research that I do, and I always try to highlight their work in the talks that I give. So thank you, and that's all for today.
Questions from the gallery?
Yeah, a lot of flowers are bred now to be different colors, different shapes, double petals, and so forth. What have you been seeing in terms of, are they better, worse, different for pollination?
The flowers that have different shapes and colors and things like that.
Yeah.
So the reason why they have all these complex forms is usually because they're adapted to be pollinated by one or two very specific types of insects. So all these weird forms or shapes not only attracts specific insects, but when the insect visits the flower, it actually guides the insect into where the flower wants the pollinator to go. Like here's the nectar is positioned so the insect has to go in and make contact with what we call the anthers and pick up the pollen. So everything is precisely designed so the pollinator arrives and moves around the flower the way the flower wants the insect to move in the flower in order to pick up the pollen. So that's why we have all these amazing different structures. Some of them have trigger anthers that would, when the pollinator visits the flower, it would step on a trigger and then that anther would come up and put the pollen on top. And it's amazing to think about those things, but so it's not that there's good or bad or one is better than the other. It's that they all find the perfect way to be pollinated by the specific insect that they want, and the shape, the color, everything reflects that the specialized pollination that they have. And some generalist flowers, a lot of asters, goldenrods, and black-eyed Susans. If you see them, they're open, flat, and they're generalists. Anyone can access them. They don't really have very complex features because they want every bee that's out there or insect to be able to reach that flower. So they have very simple flowers in terms of they're very open, very flat, very big. They're not specialized. And those want to be visited by many different things. Did I answer your question?
Well, I was thinking of buying flowers at Lowe's or Home Depot. Yeah, the cultivars and the nanovars and so forth. Is there anything that you're looking at in terms of their efficiency that they have been bred by us to supposedly prettier?
Yeah, unfortunately, and again, this is something that not a lot of people like when I say it. I don't recommend people buying those plants because, like you said, those have been bred to be attractive to us. Those have been bred, so you walk through the aisles and see this flower, and we want to have this in my house, or I want to have this in my living room. And they're good for that purpose, but they're not usually bred from the perspective of the insects. That is good from the insects. A lot of those sometimes don't produce any reward. They don't produce nectar, they don't produce pollen. They just have been bred for the aesthetic purpose of being pretty. So we like them and we buy them. So what I usually advise people is to just look for native plants. There's a lot of places around here that sell native plants. And those have a lot of value for pollinators, more than what you find at a grocery store and Lowe's and things like that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. I mean, they're attractive and pretty, but from the pollinator perspective, they're usually not very, very good. But native plants, and what I tell some people is, well, just don't mow your garden. Just let it be. And nature will come up. And things will come up, and pollinators will take advantage of that. Just don't mow your lawn, let it grow for a few weeks. It doesn't matter if the grass is a little long, and you start seeing things coming up that have been there waiting for us to stop mowing our gardens. And those plants are usually good for insects.
Agriculture has gotten so huge and specialized, like the almond orchards, sunflower fields, acres and acres and acres. The other pollinators couldn't compete, with the honeybee to pollinate all these things.
Well,
like there's thousands of almond trees and they come in flower for what, a week or 2 weeks at the absolute patches?
Yeah, there's really something to it that we don't know, and maybe like you're right, for crop or farming purposes, native bees wouldn't be enough because we do it at such a large scale. And then honeybees are very good from that perspective because, like I said, you can have them in very, very large numbers and you can ship them around. They have these huge trucks, containers that you ship honeybees from one place to the next. So honeybees can have value in that. And again, I'm not trying to say that honeybees are bad or wrong, but I'm just trying to make people more aware that there's other stuff out there that is important and needs our help. And the other thing that native bees, and the problem has been that when honeybees leave the crop, they go feed on other native plants that the native pollinators are using. And that's where some of the controversy has been, because they're displacing native pollinators from the native flowers when they move from the crop and they go to try to find something else. So it's a delicate balance. In conservation, like I tell my students when I teach the class, I don't have the answers. It's not black and white. There's a lot of gray in between. But the best thing that we can do is be informed and try to make the best decisions that we can with the information that we have. But there's not like this is the answer, or this is the answer, or this is the answer. But yeah, definitely in crops, honeybees do have a lot of value. Yeah.
Any thoughts, and maybe it's too long of an answer, or you don't have an answer, and that's okay as well, but there's been a fair share of documentaries about the demise of the honeybee. Like, did it just capture the imagination of the public? Or like, why so many doomsday, or is there different areas that they die out and don't breed well? Or like, why do we I see like documentaries all the time about.
Well, there's two things. And there are species that we use as to attract the attention to something. And honeybees we are familiar with honeybees. Everyone knows about honeybees. So it's a good species if you want to bring someone into the world and make the pollination world and make them aware of something. And we do this with other, like pandas, for example. There's a ton of documentaries about pandas because they're cute, they're attractive. Everyone wants to watch pandas on TV, and they just do this rowing thing. And so those species are good because they're charismatic and people knows them, and there's a good entryway to something else. So honeybees are good for that reason in terms of making documentaries and things like that. And that's one reason why people use them. The other reason is that honeybees do get harmed by these pesticides. So they also get sick, they also die. The reason why I say that they're not in trouble, because we manage them. They die, but we keep producing more. So their populations are not in decline, not because they're not affected, but because we keep raising them. So there's those two components. They do suffer from these effects. And they're also a species that's widely known. People get attracted to it, and it's a good place to start learning about something else. And that's my point of view on that question. Mm-hmm. Any other question? Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully I didn't disappoint.
Dr. Gomez, thank you so much. You very informative, very educational, entertaining for sure. Love that, but spot on for what we were looking for. As Jeremy said, this is really the presentation we really needed to kick this weekend off. So thank you so much for being available and for giving us your expertise. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to announce the winners of the 17th Annual Wildlife Weekend Amateur Photo Contest. It's my honor to introduce a longtime coordinator for this event, Mr. Fire Robin. Please don't help pronounce it again.
Fire Robin.
Fire Robin, thank you. It sounds different in the shower. Although Robin's legacy is firmly attached to this contest, he also dedicates countless hours to the Friends mission. In addition to managing our website, which is probably his favorite headache, he's been the driving force behind the establishment of our recently dedicated native plants garden out back, where you'll likely see him watering the plants from the sweat of his own brow. He is really dedicated to that. He's an invaluable sage to us within the Friends Board, as well as a man who is comfortable working the earth with his own hands. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Robin, Fire Robin.
Thanks very much, Wes. And I would be remiss if I didn't say kudos to Wes Walker, who has turned this event on its head. In the past, we would put together a pretty good weekend of events. I don't know how we did it because we were pretty disorganized. Wes has brought structure and organization and just an amazing amount of energy to this. So thank you, Wes, for all that you've done. And if any of you are not members of Friends and have heard enough tonight that you're intrigued and would like to help support our organization, if you're a student or a senior, it's only $10 a year. We encourage folks to give more than that. But we are an all-volunteer organization. I have some brochures. There are a few in the back. If you're interested in becoming a Friends member, be sure and let me know. I'll be glad to help you. And if I can get this. Okay. Let's try the escape button. There we go. So, some of you are here to find out about the winners. Okay. Cancel that. Okay, our 2022 amateur photography contest. We've been doing this now for about 15 or 16 years, and it is near and dear to my heart, as Wes has said. I enjoy doing it because I get to see all of these wonderful pictures. You will be seeing only the winning photos tonight, and I will tell you there are a whole bunch of other photos that could just as easily have won. The job that the judges have every year is challenging. Chris Duncan, who is a wonderful nature photographer from Bristol. He's been in Knoxville, but I understand he's moving back to Bristol. He's one of our judges. Earl Nykirk, many of you probably recognize the name from his work with the Bristol Herald Courier for many years. He is now on his own, but he does wonderful photojournalism as well as some pretty darn nice nature photography. Lance Jesse is also one of our judges in the adult category. Lance is one of our assistant naturalists here, and he works with the campers during the summer, and he helps them with photography during the nature camps that they do. Each of the campers that participates in the summer is eligible to have 2 of their photos entered in the contest. So Lance did not, because he helps in selecting some of those pictures. He doesn't judge the youth category, but he does help with the adult category. And again, they do a wonderful job. They don't just kind of flip through them and say, oh, this one, that one. They spend time. They talk about both the artistic components of the photography, but also what they mean about the park. And if you were watching any of the photos during the reception from past years, you see what an amazing job those photos do of portraying the park for the wonderful place that it is. So, without making too many more remarks that you don't want to hear, we will start with the youth category. And our first honorable mention in the youth category, Everald Blackburn. Is Everald here? Come on up. Everald's photo, bright spirit. Don't go anywhere, because also hungry is another honorable mention. There are certificates for your honorable mentions. Congratulations. Next, honorable mention in the youth category, Easton Miller. Is Easton with us tonight? Okay. This is one called Looking Up that Easton, who was one of our campers, did. So he will get his certificate at a later time. By the way, those, for anybody who's not here tonight, they're certificates, and in the case of the first, second, and third place winners, their cash awards will be available to them anytime tomorrow or at the Nature Center after that. Okay, so moving on to the third place in the youth division, another one of our campers, Jake Nelson. Is Jake with us? Okay. Across the lake and into the woods. So that's third place in the youth division. Second place in the youth division. Everald, do you want to come back up again? So this is a lovely picture, wooded hall. There's that, and don't go anywhere. Because your first place photo and talking about pollinators. Congratulations. So that's a beautiful photograph. Wonderful. Yep, you could use that in your presentations. Okay, moving on to the adult division. We have a number of honorable mentions. Is Hunter Munson here? Come on up, Hunter.
That's beautiful, Hunter.
Yes. So, and you can stand there for a second because you've got a couple of other honorable mentions. This is Cool Spring Day. The judges particularly like the perspective that you obviously had to get down and see the lake at a different angle than most of us view it.
Wow.
This is a beautiful evening on the water. Very lovely shot. And fall foliage in Steel Creek. Okay. Another honorable mention is Lois Campbell here. Lois? Nope. Dragonfly on Steel Creek Lake. Quite a lovely perspective of that dragonfly. And Kristen Wyatt. Is Kristen here? All right, come on. Little turtle. And I believe we've got one more honorable mention, Nathaniel Boer. No Nathaniel. Okay. Lunch break. Okay, moving on to the cash prizes for adult division. Nancy Vernon, 3rd place. Come on up, Nancy. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes. And I believe that was one that you particularly wanted to be sure that I got. Nancy had a little bit of difficulty being sure that I got all the pictures and they were all the right size, and this was one she said now she wanted to be sure that we got this one, so that was an important one for me to get. Very nice. And 2nd place, this is another one of Hunter Munson's blue heron. Congratulations again. And finally, our 1st place winner in the adult division is also Nathaniel Boer for Incognito. Take a close look at that one. That one is it's an amazing picture. The judges were really fascinated. And as Jeremy and I were looking at this earlier this afternoon, and he said, I think one of those characters in that picture probably didn't fare too well. So congratulations to all of our winners. If any of you submitted photos that did not get selected, don't fret. Get out and take some more pictures, send them in next year, and you may well be a winner. Because like I said, there were an awful lot of very nice photos that didn't win prizes, but could easily have done so. All of the photos are available or can be seen on the monitor out here behind the geology wall. They're also available on our website. So if you want to go back and look at all the photos that were entered, they're there. And hopefully within a week or two, all of the winning prints of all of the winning photos will be put on the wall just outside of the classroom here. So you can come back and see all of those pictures as prints. So thanks again to everybody, and Wes?
Thank you, Robin. Well, congratulations to our winners. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes this evening's event. We encourage you to congratulate our photography contest winners, as well as take a moment to visit with other guests, and obviously our presenter here gave such an excellent presentation. We hope to see you tomorrow as we celebrate 25 years of Wildlife Weekend here at Steel Creek Park. Have a good evening and safe travels home.